Hello and welcome back to another vintage inspired video. For today's video, we find ourselves standing in Hollywood, California, just outside of the Roosevelt Hotel, which is behind this hedge here. It is my favorite hotel in all of Hollywood, and that is because it is rich in old Hollywood history. I've stayed here a number of times, but I am staying here tonight, and I thought I would bring you along with me, show you some of the hotel, chat about its history, maybe go and check out Hollywood Boulevard because it is just around the corner here. So let's step back into old Hollywood. This crew started setting up as I was filming my intro. They're filming something, and it just was very Hollywood. So I wanted to point it out, show it to you as we head over to the front of the Roosevelt. You'll notice that the Cinegrill sign is still prominently displayed on the hotel. That was a celebrity haunt back in the day. The entrance used to stand right here. The restaurant paid homage to the city with a wall mural depicting the history of film. It honored the pioneers of the silent films and was frequented by stars of the day. Think Humphrey Bogart, Bette Davis, Marlene Dietrich, and also Marilyn Monroe, who will come up again later. It also attracted writers Arthur Miller and F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I'll show you once inside where it would have been in the lobby. In case you're wondering, the hotel was named after President Theodore Roosevelt and financed by early Hollywood pioneers Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, head of MGM, Louis B. Mayer, and Sid Grauman of Grauman's Chinese Theater, which we will frequent later. At the inaugural grand opening in 1927, attendees included many stars of the day: Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, Clara Bow, Greta Garbo, Gloria Swanson. Let's go inside. Once inside, you wouldn't know you were just feet away from the chaos that is Hollywood Boulevard. Wanted to take a moment of appreciation for just how beautiful and ornate this mailbox is. Just imagining Clark Gable dropping a letter in here. And this is the Blossom Room. It played a huge part in Hollywood history, and I'm going to take you in there later and we'll talk all about it. I'm not sure when this chandelier dates back to, but I think sometime around when the hotel was built. It was discovered by renovators in pieces, and they spent 6 months putting it back together. And that's because this hotel has had its share of ups and downs, and luckily managed to survive. Sometime in the 1950s, the hotel went into decline. One owner demolished its beautiful archways and covered up the elaborate painted ceiling and painted the entire hotel a shade of seafoam green. It came close to being demolished, but in the 1980s, it was saved. It was restored for $35 million to its original grandeur, including this beautiful painted ceiling. I mentioned the Cinegrill. Here is what it would have looked like at the time when it existed. It would have been back in that right corner. Opening night was treated like a premiere, with Sid Grauman throwing the first switch. Special booths designated for the major studios were also christened by their respective stars. There was dining and dancing and entertainment amongst the dishes of homemade chicken liver relish and tangy cheese omelets, which I'm not sure about you, doesn't sound great to me, but maybe they were delicious. And of course, an endless flow of cocktails. In 1954, the new owners expanded and redecorated the space, and Marilyn Monroe could be seen hanging out there. Here is just a quick look inside the diner that occupies a space opposite of where the Cinegrill used to stand. There are a number of stories that have been told about this hotel. At this point, it's possible some are apocryphal, but I'll share some of them with you. They say on these stairs, Shirley Temple took some of her first tap dancing lessons with actor and dancer Bill Bojangles Robinson. They do a tap dance in their 1935 film, The Little Colonel on a Staircase, much like this one, and were the first interracial dance partners in Hollywood history. We got to talk about Marilyn Monroe and the haunted mirror. They say this hotel is haunted. Is it? All I know is I've stayed here a number of times and I've personally never experienced anything, but this mirror is known as the Marilyn Haunted Mirror. I have asked the hotel and they say that it used to be in Marilyn's room around the pool when she lived here in the early 1950s. There's various stories, but one goes that the mirror stayed in that room until Marilyn died, and once removed, it was put into the manager's office where a housekeeper dusting the mirror saw a somber blonde behind her and turned around to ask if she could help her, but no one was there. I have a photo of me standing in front of that mirror from the first time I stayed here in the early 2000s, and I'm going to add that to my Patreon. And speaking of hauntings, there are stories of Montgomery Clift haunting this hotel as well. And oddly, without even asking, our room is on the same floor his was on. He was in room 928 and we're in 935. He stayed here for a time while making From Here to Eternity, and while he and Sinatra were staying here, they were accused of dropping beer cans outside of their windows. People say he still roams the hotel, and the sound of a bugle has been heard echoing through the hallways. I'll report back if we hear anything. I mentioned the Blossom Room earlier. Here it is. And this room holds the distinction of being the room that held the first Academy Awards in 1929. They were presented at a private dinner hosted by Douglas Fairbanks. Winners were announced 3 months before the ceremony, and it only took 15 minutes, which is hard to believe by today's Oscar standard. Janet Gaynor won Best Actress, and we're going to talk a little bit more about her later. Emil Jannings won Best Actor, but he's a controversial figure, and you won't find any mention of him on the Oscars website. Wings was the Best Picture winner and only silent film to claim that award. 270 people were in attendance, mostly Academy members. 12 awards were presented, and 20 additional certificates of honorable mention were given to the runners-up. The first year's awards could be given for a single achievement or for several. And the famous statuette was designed by MGM's art director Cedric Gibbons. This area is locked at all times, but if you ask the front desk, they're usually pretty amenable to showing it off. The views up here are gorgeous. You can see the Hollywood sign right there, and in the other direction is downtown Los Angeles, and right over there is my favorite spot in all of LA. That is the Griffith Park Observatory. This rooftop adjoins the Penthouse, which, if you're wondering, it goes for about $7,000 a night, give or take, and is roughly 3,200 square feet. It's called the Gable Lombard Penthouse because Clark Gable and Carole Lombard stayed here early in their romance when Gable was still technically married. In their day, it went for $5 a night, which with inflation is still pretty cheap, about $115 a night. I had a chance to see it, and it's really neat. I'll put up some more video of it on my Patreon. We once stayed in that room up there in the corner. It was nice. It's small and it's more modern, so maybe if that's your thing, check that one out. I know I mentioned that Marilyn lived here for a very short time. She lived up in this cabana above the pool right here. My sister stayed there once for her birthday, so I had the pleasure of seeing inside. It's pretty neat. It's changed a lot since Marilyn was here. This is a postcard from about the late 60s, so I'm not actually sure what it looked like during her time, but this is what it would have looked like then. At the time she was living here, she was just trying to get established and did one of her earliest modeling gigs for a suntan lotion right around this pool, so we're gonna line up some of those shots. Not Marilyn, but she inspired me to do some poolside photos as well. I'm gonna add another photo here. Again, not Marilyn, but I just thought it was a cute historic photo from this spot. And here is Marilyn in this exact spot. Look at that palm tree behind her. It's still here today. I can't say if it's the same palm tree, but still pretty cool. The pool wasn't part of the original hotel. It opened June 16th, 1950, and in true Hollywood fashion, water samples from all of the oceans in the world were poured into the pool by flight attendants. The main event was a pageant called Girl of Today Pageant. It lured hundreds of pleasure seekers who filled the resort to capacity, overflowing into that second floor balcony. Coming back to the haunted stories, people say they've stayed in the room below Marilyn's old suite and that they smell her perfume. I'm not sure how they would know it was hers and not somebody else. She was famously rumored to wear Chanel No. 5. I don't know, but what do you think? Do you think she still haunts the Roosevelt? Here we are on Hollywood Boulevard, and disclaimer, I don't want you to be disappointed. It's honestly not my favorite place, but I do love it for the history. I remember when I first came out here in high school with my friends, and I saw Gromans, and I was lit down by the surroundings, but the theater is gorgeous, and I still love it. This is, like I said, Grauman's Chinese Theater. It was built after the success of the nearby Egyptian theater. It opened in May of 1927. Sid Grauman didn't own it outright. Hollywood pioneers Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks owned portions as well. Stars of the day, Charlie Chaplin, Norma Talmadge, and Anna May Wong were all in attendance for the groundbreaking, with Anna May Wong putting the first rivet into the structure of the theater. The original Star is Born with Janet Gaynor has a very prominent scene that plays out right here. Her character arrives bright-eyed in Hollywood and takes in the signatures in the forecourt, all of which are still here. What's not here, though, is the fictional Norman Maines block. Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford were the first to put their handprints and signatures in the forecourt, and various stories as to what inspired this tradition exist, from actress Norma Talmadge accidentally stepping in wet concrete outside of the theater, to Sid Grauman having done the same, to Mary Pickford being inspired by seeing her dog step in wet cement. So who really knows?
Dean participates in the traditional movie land ceremony. But all good things must come to an end, so Dean makes his way to the parking area.
Making just a quick stop to show you this view. This is a shopping center that is adjacent to the Dolby Theater, which is where they host the modern day Academy Awards. Next on our small tour of Hollywood Boulevard is the Max Factor building. It's just off Hollywood Boulevard, technically. It's a four-story building that used to welcome all of the starlets of old Hollywood: Lana Turner, Rita Hayworth, Lucille Ball, Betty Davis, and countless others. Max Factor took over the building in 1935, and when it opened, there was a ground floor salon, makeup manufacturing on the next three floors, and a makeup studio in the wing that was added just before Max Factor took over. Today, it's a museum, and I've been, and I was in heaven taking in the history of all of the starlets who came through its doors. And last on our tour is the El Capitan Theater, conceptualized by real estate developer Charles E. Toberman, who also happened to develop the Max Factor building, Gromans, and the Roosevelt Hotel. It opened in May of 1926 and had live performances for decades. When it fell on hard times in the 1930s, it tried other forms of entertainment and began showing movies. A story I enjoy is Citizen Kane became theater poison after William Randolph Hearst, angry at Orson Welles for the film and its thinly veiled depiction of him, threatened theaters who showed the film. When Welles had a hard time finding theaters willing to show it, the El Capitan stepped in and hosted the West Coast premiere in May of 1941. All right, that does it for today's video. Saying goodbye from outside of the El Capitan Theater here on Hollywood Boulevard. And until that next video, I'm wishing you a super swell day. And I'll see you then. Bye. If you'd like, check out my Patreon for those extras I mentioned. I will also include a little bit more footage from inside the Marilyn suite and some more photos I did around the pool. Oh, and sadly, we did not hear any bugles.